Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 69 based on novel. So let's start. Hua Yuhao's eyes shone with golden light as he faced the immense spiritual pressure placed on him by Han Ruoruo. A layer of golden light soon engulfed his entire body. When the golden light shone, a dim golden fog also rose from his body. What? Han Ruoruo exclaimed slightly. She was stunned to discover that her spiritual lock had lost its effect, or rather, it had been isolated. She hadn't expected such a thing to occur, especially considering that she had 8 rings and was facing a 5-ringed opponent. Minga, be careful. Hua Yuhao's spiritual cultivation isn't below mine. How could his spiritual power be so strong? Just as Han Ruoruo was becoming perplexed, Wang Yang watched as both parties unleashed their martial souls. He shouted, "Begin." Both parties acted immediately. Wu Ming was the fastest. As she tipped her toes to the ground, she leapt forward. Her golden crow primordial fire was unleashed, and intense sparks started to illuminate the entire arena. Han Ruoruo and Chu Qingtian were completely concealed by the sparks. As she shouted and burst forward, she pointed her right hand toward the sky. Her 4th soul ring shone brightly, and a ruby ball of light the size of a longan shot into the sky. This ball of light was very small when it appeared, but it grew continuously as it ascended. When it was 30 meters from the ground, it had already grown to the size of a head. After this, it started to crash down towards Shrek 7 monsters like a meteorite. Shrek 7 monsters were mostly unfamiliar with Wu Ming's soul skills. Shu Sanxia took a step forward and lifted his shield of the Shenming turtle up high, preparing to resist Wu Ming's attack. Ripples spread out across the pitch-black shield. Among Shrek 7 monsters, Hua Yuhao was an ice type, while Shu Sanxia was truly water type. His defense didn't just possess the resilience of his shield, but also the gentleness of water. At least in terms of element, his shield wasn't inferior to the Golden Crow primordial fire. However, something weird suddenly occurred. The scarlet-red fireball that was moving extremely quickly stopped in the air just as it was about to crash against the shield. After that, it made a turn and glided past it. It seemed to sweep past Bei Bei, Shu Sanxia and Jiang Nannan, and started to crash down towards He Kai-tu at the center of the formation. Her control over this soul skill was immaculate. If Wu Ming only attacked with brute force, how would she be able to reign with terror in the inner courtyard? She was truly capable. Even with Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection, he could only judge that Wu Ming was controlling her soul skill. However, he didn't know what transformation was going to happen to her soul skill. Wu Ming revealed a smile on her face. Her 4th soul skill was called the Golden Crow Primordial Fire Ring. Once it blew apart in the center of the opponent's formation, it would cause a tremendous impact and scorching effect. Even if it couldn't harm them, it could at least destroy their formation and separate them. Once their formation was disrupted, they could be dealt with individually using Han Ruoruo's control. In such a perilous situation, Shrek 7 monsters were indeed quite frantic. After all, the 7 of them hadn't teamed up with one another for more than 2 years. All 7 of them wanted to attack at the same time, but they were lacking slightly in chemistry. However, this lack of cooperation could be made up for using their capabilities. Xiao Xiao shouted, "Let me handle it." Chemistry was built on trust. When she shouted this, the rest of the 6 didn't bother with the Golden Crow primordial fire ring and continued to burst forward. A ball of black light appeared just as the Golden Crow primordial fire ring crashed down. It was a huge cauldron. The cauldron was around 1.5 meters high, 1.5 meters across, and it was as heavy as a mountain. From the looks of it, the Golden Crow primordial fire ring was going to crash into this cauldron. Its strength was undoubtedly going to be contained by it. However, Wu Ming controlled her soul skill again. The crashing Golden Crow primordial fire ring moved 3 inches laterally before it continued to descend. This was the second shift of her soul skill. As a soul sage from Shrek Academy, Wu Ming's spiritual power was superior to most other ordinary soul sages. However, her smile froze just as she revealed it on her face. The cauldron divided into 3 components just as the Golden Crow primordial fire ring moved. Wu Ming's control was limited, and so, her ring landed in one of the cauldrons. Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection couldn't judge how Wu Ming was going to control her soul skill, but he could accurately grasp the timing of her actions. Xiao Xiao's 3 lives soul crush cauldron divided at that timing, and the Golden Crow primordial fire ring was caught in one of them. This was Wu Ming's second soul skill, Golden Crow primordial fire combustion. Both parties were now only 100 meters apart. After the initial attack, the gap between both parties had been pulled closer. Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia didn't rush forward recklessly. They maintained their formation with the rest behind them. From the side, Jiang Nannan had vanished directly behind Shu Sanxia. She couldn't be located anymore. On their side, the Agility-type Soulmaster had disappeared behind their Defense-type Soulmaster. On their opponent's side, Chu Qingtian also hid behind Wu Ming. Wu Ming clasped her hands in front of her. Since her soul skills wouldn't work, she changed her strategy. A beam of golden red fire instantly shot out from her hands. This beam of fire was almost a meter across, and shot straight towards Shrek's 7 monsters. It was a direct confrontation. At this point, Hua Yuhao finally made his move. He quickly took a step forward, coming beside He Kai-tu. Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia moved to either side of him. With Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection, they didn't need to rely on sound to warn one another. The entire process proceeded smoothly, and their cohesion was great. An azure-green light started to shine from Hua Yuhao's chest and belly. In the next moment, a huge beam of azure-green light shot out towards Wu Ming's first soul skill, the Golden Crow Primordial Fire. While it was only Wu Ming's first soul skill, it was enhanced by her second soul skill. As both soul skills complemented each other, the air seemed to be scorched as the golden red beam of fire passed. The air started to distort, and revealed ripple-like patterns. However, this was the complete opposite of what was happening on Hua Yuhao's side. The azure-green beam of light caused all the heat to be replaced with a chill. His attack clashed directly with the Golden Crow Primordial Fire. It was the Ice Empress Wrath. This was once Hua Yuhao's strongest soul skills, and it was still very effective now. Under the effect of his Haodong power and with help from Wang Donga, the depletion of his soul power was negligible. The contrasting beams of light clashed together in the air. This was also the first direct clash of abilities. Dense fog started to diffuse from the center of the collision. A piercing sound reverberated, and the two beams of light were destroyed at the same time. Neither party gained an advantage. Impressive. It earns its name as the ultimate ice. Wu Ming shouted as she jumped up high. A pair of golden red wings flapped open behind her back. Her martial soul was the Golden Crow, and possessed flying abilities. It wasn't a soul skill or soul tool. The Golden Crow Primordial Fire continued to be unleashed. As she flew into the air, a streak of dim golden light also flashed across. It was unleashed quickly beneath her feet towards Shrek's 7 monsters. Hanruoruo had finally acted. When Hanruoruo made her move, all 7 of her foes turned serious. She was an 8-ringed Soul Doluo, the strongest opponent they had ever faced. Hanruoruo's first soul ring lit up, and the streak of golden light that came from it was like a golden line that stretched into infinity. It was like a spiritual snake that slithered forward. After it flashed beneath Wu Ming's feet, it reached Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia in the next moment. This was Hanruoruo's control-type tool soul, the Dazzling Golden Rope. The Dazzling Golden Rope was like living matter, and started to quiver towards both sides. At the same time, 2 golden rings arced out towards Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia. Bei Bei pressed his hands down, and 2 thunderous dragon claws were unleashed. Amidst reverberating booms, 2 huge claw prints were left behind on the granite layering the ground as the thunderous dragon claws struck. However, the dazzling golden rope twisted slightly before it managed to circle around them. It seemed to have eyes. At the same time, its speed didn't drop at all as it continued to loop towards Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia. Hua Yuhao made a move again. He didn't know how strong a control-type Soul Doluo was, but he was certain that this sparring would end if he allowed Hanruoruo to gain the upper hand. A purple light flashed across Hua Yuhao's eyes. Hanruoruo's body jerked slightly, and she took a step back. Her dazzling golden rope was also retracted, and arced out in a huge golden ring in the air. Yes, it was Hua Yuhao's spiritual shock, one of the few offensive soul skills of his spirit eyes. A main control-type soul master against another main control-type soul master. Hua Yuhao managed to gain a slight advantage over Hanruoruo as she was caught off guard. However, her spiritual power was indeed strong. Although she was a little lost for a moment, her eyes then started to shine brightly. A dim silvery glow shot out of her eyes, engulfing her entire body. It was yet another embodiment of her spiritual power, although it was a different color. When this layer of silvery spiritual power flowed out, Hua Yuhao felt as if she were unstoppable. However, he had still managed to buy some time for the rest. As Hanruoruo's dazzling golden rope was restricted, Shrek's 7 monsters unleashed their full powers. Shu Sanxia was the first to make a move. He took a big step forward, and his shield lit up with a weird black glow. In the next instant, he flew into the air. Wu Ming was about to unleash a strike towards him when he suddenly disappeared. Shu Sanxia was displaced to her position. Mysterious Underworld Displacement. This was the soul skill that stole the limelight during the last edition of the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament. The most unique trait of this mysterious underworld displacement was its element of surprise. If caught off guard by it, it was impossible to break free once one was locked on. That was why it became one of Shu Sanxi's strongest soul skill as a defense-type soul master. For defense-type soul masters, this was a divine skill. At certain times, the mysterious underworld displacement could change the outcome of a situation entirely. Unless the opponent's soul and spiritual power were completely overwhelming his mysterious underworld displacement would never fail. Even though Wu Ming was a soul sage, Shu Sanxia was a soul emperor. He wouldn't have any confidence if he used it against Hanruoruo, but it shouldn't be resisted easily by Wu Ming, considering her cultivation. As he was displaced, Shu Sanxia faced Chu Qingtian. Chu Qingtian saw a sly smile on his face before gloomy clouds starting to appear. However, it was also because of this that this blow was very strong. If not for the fact that Shu Sanxia had the Xuanwu's blood lineage in his martial soul, it couldn't have been so strong. Wu Ming was also in a crisis on the other side. When Shu Sanxia struck, Bei Bei also burst forward. However, he turned back immediately after bursting a few meters out. Jiang Nannan did almost exactly the same thing as him, whereas Hu Yuhao, Wang Donga, Xiao Xiao and He Kai-tu completed an arc-shaped formation. When Wu Ming was displaced, she was already completely surrounded by the 6 of them. Wu Ming was in a daze as she was encircled. Shrek's 7 monsters were familiar with such a strategy and coordination. Their chemistry hadn't seemed to fall even after more than 2 years. Hu Yuhao struck her just as Wu Ming landed. He unleashed the complete version of the Dark Golden Terror Claws supported by the Ice Empress Pincer. Xiao Xiao changed to her second martial soul, the 9 Phoenix worshipping flute. Even though it only had 1 soul ring, her soul power was much superior to before. The pleasant sounds of the flute caused Wu Ming to feel dizzy, and her speed dropped significantly. Bei Bei let out a huge amount of electricity. As the vigorous thunderbolt was unleashed, it turned into an electric web that engulfed her. Wang Donga flapped her wings, and the light of the butterfly goddess flowed towards Wu Ming. A huge amount of golden light started to flood her body. 4 out of the 6 attacked. Only Jiang Nannan and He Kai-tu remained where they were. Jiang Nannan was waiting for an opportunity, whereas He Kai-tu was lifting a heavy cannon to his shoulder. His target was Han Ruoruo. An intense red light flashed, and a huge ball of red light shot out into the air towards Han Ruoruo. This was a Class 6 high-power cannon shell. This kind of high-power cannon shell was extremely explosive and fiery. It could only be fired by a Class 6 high-power soul cannon, and even then, it could only be fired 3 times consecutively. The Class 6 high-powered soul cannon could only be used again after a 2-hour cooldown period, otherwise it might overheat and explode. Its offensive strength was one of the best among Class 6 soul tools. Moreover, He Kai-tu still had Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection to guide him. He didn't need to worry about his accuracy. Shrek's 7 monsters were spiritually connected at this point. Shu Sanxia had flown out and used his strong domain-type soul skill. He didn't just want to stop Chu Qingtian, he also wanted to trap Han Ruoruo. Along with He Kai-tu's cannon shell, their aim was not to kill or hurt their opponents. Rather, they wanted to delay Han Ruoruo and Chu Qingtian's assistance to Wu Ming. On the other side, the 4 of them teamed up to attack Wu Ming. However, Wu Ming wasn't easy to deal with. At such a critical moment, Wu Ming demonstrated her outstanding abilities. Her 7th soul ring lit up at this point. Instantly, she turned into a fiery golden-red lady. She let out a sonorous whistle, and her wings flapped to propel her upwards. She clashed with Hu Yuhao's dark golden terror claws. As reverberating booms sounded, the granite under Wu Ming's feet started to crack. However, she had first managed to resist the delay that the 9 Phoenix worshipping flute had imposed on her as she unleashed her golden crow true body. Bei Bei's vigorous thunderbolt was also resisted by the golden crow true body. As the light of the butterfly goddess landed on the golden crow true body, it caused huge ripples to surface. However, it couldn't force Wu Ming back. Only the dark golden terror claws had some effect on her. Yes, this was her martial soul true body, a powerful skill that only a soul sage possessed. Hu Yuhao and Wang Donga had once faced Zhao Yang's martial soul true body. His violet gold bear had left a deep impression on them. But at this point, they realized the true terror of a martial soul true body as Wu Ming unleashed her golden crow true body. Wu Ming's aura sword and her scorching golden crow primordial fire forced Bei Bei and Jiang Nannan to retreat a few steps. Even as she withstood the attacks of several soul skills, she wasn't at a disadvantage. Although she was surrounded, she seemed to be counterattacking. "Open up!" Wu Ming shouted as she revealed her strong side. Her 3rd soul ring lit up, and she pressed her hands downward. She was about to unleash her 3rd soul skill, the Golden Crow Primordial Fire Explosion. It was a soul skill that caused immense destruction, and was most suitable to be used when one was trapped. However, Jiang Nannan started to act at this point. As she leapt into the air, she had already arrived behind Wu Ming. A dark golden glow lit up on her body. Due to the gap in their abilities, Jiang Nannan couldn't possibly stay on Wu Ming forever. After all, the Golden Crow Primordial Fire would burn her once her invincible golden body disappeared. As a result, the Golden Crow Primordial Fire Combustion and Golden Crow Primordial Fire Explosion that Wu Ming was going to unleash were sealed even though her martial soul true body was still on display. Jiang Nannan was fighting for this little bit of time for the rest. An orange-gold figure flew out from Hu Yuhao's body at this point. In the next moment, Hu Yuhao arrived in front of Wu Ming. He gently tapped her shoulder. At the same time, Hua Yuhao's Ice Jade Empress Scorpion's third soul ring and the second of his 4 orange gold soul rings lit up. Jiang Nannan disappeared as Hua Yuhao tapped Wu Ming's shoulder. Her third soul skill helped her to escape after she bought enough time for Hua Yuhao. His palm was gentle, as well as smooth and spotless. As his palm struck Wu Ming's shoulder, her entire body started to tremble. The golden crow primordial fire that had broken free from the restraint of the soft bone lock was instantly extinguished, as if a basin of ice water had been poured over it. Wu Ming's body also froze. The golden red faded from her body, and her golden crow true body seemed to have been dissipated by Hua Yuhao's gentle palm. Empress Palm. Snowless Glacier. Niu Tian had once mentioned that the only way to avoid the snowless glacier was to avoid being struck by it. The Empress Palm had to make contact before it could take effect. Considering his status as the Clear Sky Sect master, his appraisal of the Snow Empress Snow Glacier showed how strong it was. Sword and palm sends the sky into a chill, the Empress sword, palm, and chill. Among these 3 soul skills, the Empress Palm was ranked second. However, it was the strongest among the 3 in terms of its direct offensive strength. After fusing with the Snow Empress spirit, Hua Yuhao no longer possessed ultimate ice, but ultimate ice and snow. Among all cold-type soul masters, no one could compare to him. Even without the enhancement of the snowy dance of ultimate ice, Hua Yuhao's snowless glacier still managed to achieve a temperature of absolute 0. While the golden crow true body was very strong, the strength of Hua Yuhao's snowless glacier was still exhibited as it struck at such a close distance. Wu Ming felt her shoulder turning numb as it was hit. In the next moment, she discovered that her soul power seemed to have solidified. Her martial soul true body disintegrated instantly, and her entire right arm went numb. A lukewarm feeling started to gush from her shoulder to the rest of her body. Yes, it was a lukewarm feeling. However, it gave her chills. Reversal. After Hua Yuhao struck Wu Ming, he also felt something amiss, and pressed his palm down again. As the warm flow returned to his body, both he and the Snow Lady started to shine with bright orange light. The attack was absorbed back into Hua Yuhao. Not only was his soul power restored, but even the Snow Lady benefited greatly. Wu Ming unleashed her golden crow primordial fire once again, but her face had turned pale white. She didn't know if she would have survived if Hua Yuhao hadn't absorbed the warm flow in time. However, she knew that it had been gushing towards her heart. What soul skill was that? Wu Ming was stunned. The rest of Shrek's 7 monsters didn't continue to attack her after they were informed by Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection. However, the sparring still continued. Just as Wu Ming was struck by the snowless glacier, Shu Sanxia also ran into trouble. Chu Qingtian couldn't handle the turtle god strike, and was forced back. However, there was still Han Ruoruo behind him. Han Ruoruo lifted her hand as she faced the turtle god strike and he Kaitu's high-power cannon shell. A golden ring light was unleashed with her body in the center. She didn't rush to save Wu Ming, as she knew Wu Ming well, and had absolute confidence in her. Han Ruoruo believed that Shrek's 7 monsters couldn't defeat Wu Ming easily since she had unleashed her martial soul true body, even if they encircled her. Shu Sanxia didn't have to bother helping them defeat her either. The golden ring looked very simple, as if it were a thick arm. It had a diameter of around 5 meters. However, a shocking scene appeared when the golden ring collided with the turtle god's strike and he Kaitu's high-power cannon shell boom, boom, 2 loud booms sounded at the same time. The first to blow apart was the high-power cannon shell. He Kaitu chose to fire at this timing in order to coordinate with Shu Sanxia. As an advanced-level soul engineer, he had great awareness. In addition, he had Hua Yuhao's help. However, the golden ring appeared to be impregnable. Chu Qingtian couldn't give up such a perfect opportunity. He snuck up behind Shu Sanxia, and a panther projection formed by lightning shone brightly before striking Shu Sanxi's body forcefully. Suddenly, Shu Sanxi's body started to flash with lightning. He appeared to be convulsing. As Han Ruoruo flung her right hand, Shu Sanxia was thrown forward. Wang Yang made his judgment. Shu Sanxia had been eliminated. This was the first time the Shrek's 7 monsters attack had ever been stopped once the mysterious underworld displacement was used. Shu Sanxia didn't stand a chance against Han Ruoruo. The rest also started to feel that the dazzling golden rope was going to be difficult to deal with. The rope could loosen, tighten, whip and block. When it tangled, it was flexible. However, it seemed indestructible when it tightened. Han Ruoruo controlled her martial soul very well. Shu Sanxia was defeated before he could unleash his full strength. Although that was partly due to the fact that Han Ruoruo's martial soul was very effective at curbing Shu Sanxia, it was also undeniable that the gap in their cultivations played a huge part in his defeat. Shrek's 7 monsters were stunned, but Han Ruoruo was also shocked. She had defeated Shu Sanxia in the shortest time possible. However, she was appalled to discover that the rest of the 6 were rushing towards her, while Wu Ming didn't move from her spot. What did it mean for the 6 of them to turn their backs on her? It meant that she had been defeated. So quickly? Minga only just showed her golden crow true body. At the same time as she was puzzled, she also became warier. Her eyes turned fiercer, and she snorted. The dazzling golden rope struck forward towards the 6 of them. She was aiming for Hua Yuhao. He Kai-tu, who was in front of the rest, suddenly stopped. A crisp, clanging sound rang out as he stood firmly rooted to the ground. A circular metal disc appeared beneath his feet. The bottom of the disc was conical, and stabbed right into the granite below. He Kai-tu stood above this disc. Following this, a large number of soul tools started to combine with his body. In a matter of seconds, he had become a metal monster with countless barrels pointing outwards, all aimed at Hanruoruo. Among Shrek's 7 monsters, who had the greatest abilities? In terms of explosiveness, it wasn't Bei Bei, Shu Sancha, Hua Yuhao, or Wang Donga. It was He Kai-tu. He Kai-tu was already a Class 7 Soul Engineer, which was equivalent to a Soul Sage. Although a Class 7 Soul Engineer was still some way off from a Soul Sage's martial soul true body, the gap was still within the same level. After 5 years, He Kai-tu once again used a soul tool fort strategy. However, it was on a different level compared to 5 years ago. He lifted a huge, heavy dark gold cannon that was more than 2.5 meters long onto his shoulder. He used the rest of his soul tools to support the weight of this cannon. When the cannon was unleashed, even Hanruoruo felt a chill down her spine. Hanruoruo could feel the imminent threat from her opponent acutely. She finally chose to avoid meeting this force head-on, and opted to evade this attack instead. The dazzling golden rope that was soaring forward suddenly changed direction and plummeted downwards before it planted itself steadily onto the ground, while Hanruoruo's shook her body subtly before she propelled herself away. One could see from a distance that there was an enormous pillar of light surging forward like a shooting star somewhere high up on the Sea God's Island. This was the effect of He Kai-tu's soul tool fortress being used at full power. Juxtaposed with the disturbance caused by his explosive shell, the academy was finally riled up. Everybody else began to move when He Kai-tu launched this attack. Xiao Xiao began to blow her 9 phoenix worshipping flute once more, and 1 soul ring sparkled on her body as light rippled outward. However, these circles weren't targeting Hanruoruo, they were going for the Berserk Lightning Panther, Chu Qingtian, who was evading the attack on one side and currently watching He Kai-tu with a look of astonishment. Chu Qingtian had truly been frightened. He was part of the Shrek Academy's inner courtyard, but this was the first time he had seen a high-level soul engineer's prowess. Another person slunk out when He Kai-tu fired his attack. Jiang Nannan. Jiang Nannan was an agility-type soul master, and her lean and slender thighs pushed off the ground and jumped more than 10 meters horizontally. She arrived next to Chu Qingtian after another bounce. Chu Qingtian was also an agility-type soul master, and he was even known as the fastest person in the inner courtyard, so his reaction wasn't slow at all. Even though Jiang Nannan had a weaker cultivation, he had already seen the Shrek's 7 monsters' prowess, and he didn't dare to be complacent at all. His body image flashed as he attempted to escape the battlefield. He was still confident in his own speed. However, a dash of golden light suddenly flickered across his eyes right at this moment, and another streak of white light flashed by immediately afterwards. His mind was instantly thrown into a complete blank, while everything around him became blurry. The sky around him seemed like it was spinning round and round, and his body had only just left the ground before he touched down once more. Hua Yuhao's 4th soul ring was sparkling. It was his spirit eye's 4th soul skill, spiritual confusion. All Jiang Nannan needed was this little bit of time. Hanruoruo had been forced away by He Kai-tu's assault, who had been positioned towards her right side. This forced Hanruru to dodge towards the left, while Chu Qingtian was already on the right. This meant Hanruru and Chu Qingtian were separated the moment He Kai-tu launched his attack. Fortunately, this was just a practice battle. He Kai-tu's petrifying cannon barrels flickered once before they returned to normal. Hanruoruo had been forced backwards, but she responded immediately. Another golden soul ring sparkled as her elegant figure bounced off the ground, and circles of light waved outward. While she defended herself in every possible way, her dazzling golden rope snaked with lightning speed towards Jiang Nannan and Chu Qingtian. Providing aid to their compatriots was the most important role of control-type soul masters. However, Hua Yuhao was also the main control-type soul master of his team. How could he give her this chance? He channeled his spiritual confusion as he reached out with his right hand, and Wang Donga slid into his embrace. She hadn't been doing much throughout the entire battle. An enormous eye with a vertical pupil and tinged with incredibly beautiful colors instantly appeared on the battlefield. This vertical eye's brilliance was far too illustrious, to the point where Hanruoruo couldn't ignore it. The alarm in her heart paused her forward momentum momentarily, and a golden road immediately stretched out before her. If she hadn't stopped in her tracks, then that golden road would have shone directly upon her. The 3-colored radiance flickered, and the dazzling golden road sprawled horizontally in front of her eyes. The golden road didn't touch Hanruoruo at all, but it struck her dazzling golden rope. The dazzling golden rope's forward movement ceased, and it grew soft and slack, as if it had lost all vitality. It couldn't complete its rescue mission for Chu Qingtian. Thus, Wang Yang had already ruled Chu Qingtian out of the battle at this point. If He Kai-tu hadn't shown mercy, this berserk lightning panther would have been cooked. Shrek's 7 monsters chose to divide and conquer even when they were 7 versus 3 against a Soul Emperor, a Soul Sage, and a Soul Doluo, and their plan succeeded. Even Han Ruoruo was unable to save her 2 comrades in time. Even though Shu Sanxia had been kicked out, this exchange of 1 for 2 was worth it for Shrek's 7 monsters. She made this statement very casually, and there wasn't a tinge of outrageousness or arrogance in it at all. It felt as if it was a simple statement of fact, but immense pressure began to rise in the Shrek's 7 monsters' hearts at this moment. Han Ruoruo raised both arms at the same time, and silver light burst forth from her eyes again. The dazzling golden rope spun around her petite frame rapidly, and began to dance. The light became increasingly blurry, and Hu Yuhao realized to his shock that his spiritual detection couldn't reach her anymore. It couldn't pierce those golden circles. Han Ruoruo's dazzling golden rope was charged with spiritual undulations. This was an effect obtained by fusing spiritual power and soul power together. He Kai-tu's dark golden cannon barrel sparkled, and golden lights spurted continually. However, he had lost Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection lock-on, and thus wasn't so confident in his shot's accuracy anymore. He was a Class 7 Soul Engineer, but he was ultimately still a Soul Emperor. The heavy cannon on his shoulder was a Class 7 Soul tool, but one more blast would consume too much of his soul power, possibly more than it had in the previous strike. A pale silver light covered Han Ruoruo's body, and she stared at Hu Yuhao meaningfully before she vanished entirely, along with the mix of gold and silver lights. Countless dazzling golden ropes that were both gold and silver erupted in all directions when she disappeared, blanketing the entire battlefield in an instant. Circles of the same colors rapidly appeared on the ground, and bore towards Shrek's 7 monsters with blinding speed. The dazzling golden true body, faced with the pressure of Shrek's 7 monsters, Han Ruoruo had finally used her martial soul true body. This was also a martial soul true body, but the feeling she gave the 6 of them was vastly different from before. What was different? There was no longer a single target. Wu Ming's martial soul true body was charged with high-temperature golden crow primordial fire, but her original body was still there. However, Han Ruoruo's dazzling golden true body was similar to Chu Qingtian's lightning transformation. She transformed into innumerable dazzling golden ropes. How were they supposed to assault them? Bei Bei was the first to suffer. Bei Bei planted his right foot heavily onto the ground when he realized things were going wrong, then he activated his thunderous dragon head toward the ground. Large patches of lightning spread across the ground as he attempted to impede the dazzling golden true body's advance. However, his attack was completely futile. The dazzling golden true body didn't even pause for a moment amongst the flickering streaks of lightning, and it continued to surge forward. A gold and silver circle of light soundlessly appeared beneath Bei Bei's feet, and a gold and silver beam of light rose into the sky immediately afterwards, sending Bei Bei flying through the air. All his soul power and his soul skills were sealed once he was struck. He was completely wrapped up by the dazzling golden rope once he was tossed into the sky. Han Ruoruo didn't just use her dazzling golden true body. She was their senior sister, and the arrogance and pride in her heart was triggered when Shrek's 7 monsters displayed their prowess. She had also used her 8th and most powerful soul skill, Golden Sky Surge. This was an incredibly powerful domain-like soul skill that could be used on a group of targets or a single target. The snowy dance of ultimate ice had finally descended upon the world once more. This was the fusion between the Ice Empress domain of perpetual ice and the Snow Empress snowy dance of the brilliant sun. Both were incredibly powerful soul skills. The temperature across the entire battleground began to plummet. Wu Ming had already backed out of the battlefield, and was already back to normal, but her expression changed in an instant. This was because she was a fire-type soul master, and her perception of this extreme chill was far more conspicuous. She could clearly feel how low the battlefield's temperature had dropped. Bei Bei, Xiao Xiao, and Jiang Nannan had been thrown out of the circle after they were tossed into the air one after another. This was a practice battle after all, and Han Ruoruo definitely didn't want to hurt them. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong'er vanished amongst the tremendous patches of ice and frost, and even He Kai-tu disappeared as well. The ground was covered with gold and silver circles of light in the same instant. Streak after streak of jewel-colored light surged up from the ground and stirred the waltzing snowflakes in the sky in an attempt to find the 3 of them. However, just like how Hu Yuhao couldn't determine Han Ruoruo's location, Han Ruoruo couldn't find Hu Yuhao either within his snowy dance of ultimate ice. Wu Ming's expression was a little sullen. She knew that she had already lost to Hu Yuhao in terms of their elements. The palm she took before this was based on this fact. Her golden crow primordial fire was strong, but it was nowhere near as extreme as Hu Yuhao's ice and snow. Her element had been overpowered, and the formidable chill from that simple-looking strike had defeated her. Go, Ruoruo. While Wu Ming's despondence was extremely ephemeral, her mentality was very strong, and she immediately began to cheer for Han Ruoruo. The gold and silver circles started to transform on the ground. They gradually dissipated, and everything changed into horizontal patterns of light. These patterns began to ripple immediately afterwards, and they swept up into the sky like tidal waves. The turbulent ice and snow was stirred up even more vigorously, and the air was filled with dense, extremely powerful soul power undulations. The ice and snow that were originally concentrated inside the sparring arena were whipped into pieces, and they gradually drifted into the air outside. Han Ruoruo had unleashed her sixth soul skill, Golden Wave. This was an area of effect control type soul skill, and its main function was to dispel. She naturally couldn't dispel Hua Yuhao's domain, but she could still dispel the ice and snow that Hua Yuhao had formed inside this domain with his soul power. The situation immediately descended into an impasse. It was all right if she couldn't find Hua Yuhao, as Han Ruoruo had absolute confidence that he would be the first to drop if this impasse was allowed to continue. He was still a soul king after all, and their cultivations were ultimately still a world apart. Furthermore, Han Ruoruo's golden wave meant that Hua Yuhao's snowflakes were also within the area of effect. This practice combat would be over the moment she discovered Hua Yuhao. "We've lost, senior sister." Hua Yuhao didn't attempt to keep this up, and his voice resonated through the air. Hua Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "I did no such thing. You're too powerful, senior sister." Yes, Han Ruoruo was too powerful. She had almost defeated Shrek's 7 monsters with a single strike. Han Ruoruo, Wu Ming, and Chu Qingtian were still shaken by the Shrek's 7 monsters' prowess. However, the 7 of them seemed a little dull. They had been defeated, in the end. This was what a gap in ability and cultivation meant, and perhaps also what a gap in battle experience meant. Han Ruoruo had been 1 versus 6, but they had had no chance at all. Wu Ming was only knocked out because her element was countered, and she wasn't familiar with Hua Yuhao's abilities. The sparring arena's temperature had dropped from all the ice and snow strewn across the ground. The teachers that came from elsewhere to watch were both stunned and slack-jawed. They came over to emphasize the importance of safety, and they inspected the grounds to ensure that they hadn't been overly damaged before they walked away. Shu Sanxia grumbled, "Senior Sister Han, you're too brutal. I didn't even get to use my abilities before I was thrown out of the fight." Han Ruoruo snapped, "You didn't get to use your abilities? You managed to swap Minga away. What's up with you, Minga? You couldn't even last a little while longer." Wu Ming was even more despondent than Shu Sanxia was. "I couldn't take it, Ruoruo. I don't even know what soul skill Hua Yuhao used when he hit me with his palm, but my martial soul true body was instantly dispelled. If he hadn't withdrawn his soul power in time, I might have been severely wounded. His ultimate ice is powerful, his element completely overpowered mine." Han Ruoruo's gaze changed a little when she turned towards Hua Yuhao once more. Han Ruoruo hadn't felt at all comfortable inside his snowy dance of ultimate ice either. She was fettered by the low temperature and extreme chill even under the effects of her dazzling golden true body. The snowflakes that descended from the sky possessed formidable offensive strength at the same time, and she had consumed a lot of soul power. The stunning sword that sliced open her golden sky surge at the end also left an exceptionally strong impression. "Stop complaining, everyone." Wang Yang came over with a smile on his face. This practice combat was short, but it was spectacular. "Bei Bei, Yuhao, you guys lost the fight, but you guys were still glorious in defeat. You guys have to know that Ruoruo is considered one of the strongest among the inner courtyard students, and the gap in cultivation isn't something that can be plugged with numbers." Wang Yang chuckled and said, "And you, Qingtian, you weren't able to display your full power, and your reactions were a little slow. If you had used your lightning transformation the moment Minga was swapped away by that mysterious underworld displacement, she might have been able to escape the soul skills that came afterwards." Chu Qingtian nodded as Wu Ming shot a fierce glare in his direction. It was clear that she wasn't very pleased with his performance. Wang Yang turned towards Wu Ming and said, "Actually, you did a good job. A fight between soul masters means both sides must try their best to suppress each other by maximizing their respective strengths and fortes. However, you have to be clear about what's up with your opponents. Hua Yuhao's ultimate ice isn't a secret, and I know you wanted to fight against it in your heart. The fact that it can be described as an ultimate element already proves his elemental advantage. However, I didn't expect Hua Yuhao to be able to break your martial soul true body. Still, your defeat isn't unfair at all. Even though you're a soul sage, it's not easy to defend yourself against 6 people barraging you at the same time. The only problem was with your mentality. You must have thought that the others wouldn't be able to do anything to you if you unleashed your martial soul true body, so breaking through their siege wouldn't be too difficult, and you could possibly turn the tables on them instead. If you had opted to break through their encirclement instead of facing them head-on, you might have had a different outcome. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.